time. Welcome to our June full moon celebration. I'm Kendra Kobler. I am your Moonshot host today and always. I hope you're getting used to me. Please introduce yourself in the chat, as Susie mentioned, and let us know where you're calling in from. And a few quick Zoom logistics. You can choose between gallery or speaker view. Please keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking, and beware of the share screen function. And I will now mute everyone if you don't mind. And also, in the spirit of Include and Pride Month, I invite our participants to add their pronouns to their Zoom name. If you'd like, you can simply click the three dots on the top right of your little square and click rename, and you can add them after your name. And I'll just mention that that's important because adding self-expression to your written and social identities helps normalize this practice for those who might not identify within a single gender. So thanks for your consideration. And we have an exciting agenda today, very exciting. And we'll now kick off today's call with a quick welcome from Susie Ellis, our chair and CEO of the Global Wellness Institute. Susie, please make sure, oh, you're unmuted already. Great, you're ready to go. Over to you, Susie.
Thank you, Kendra, and welcome to everyone to our June Wellness Moonshot Full Moon Celebration. I know many of you know that we gather, but some of you are new. We gather once a month to celebrate the Wellness Moonshot, which is a world free of preventable disease. And this is the Global Wellness Institute's initiative to get 7.9 billion people on the planet, and that is everybody, to think about prevention and wellness whenever they look at the moon, and especially on the day of the month when it is full, like today. So we always have a word of the month, and this month the word is include, as Kendra already mentioned. And she has a very special agenda planned for us today, which I'm very excited about. Because we're going to be highlighting, she's going to be highlighting this topic of include all the way through. And I'm happy to announce that we as an organization, the nonprofit Global Wellness Institute, as well as our sister organization, the Global Wellness Summit, we are renewing our efforts in the area of inclusion and keeping this important conversation top of mind. We feel that is very important to do. And I wanted to point out that one of the top GWS wellness trends for 2021 was adding color to wellness, which is a great read. And I'm so thrilled that, in fact, Tonya Collender, if you can just wave there, she is the researcher from GWS who actually wrote that trend. And actually, you'd be the best person to talk about it. Maybe there'll be time for that. But I wanted to mention that one of the things she wrote in there that very much touched me is some of her experiences that she has had visiting some spas and wellness facilities in the past. And as a woman of color, you know, some of these experiences were pretty riveting and eye-opening to me. And so I know she mentioned that there are some places that she goes to where she'll drive an extra 30 minutes because she goes to places where she feels welcome. So we have to do so much better. And thank you for being on this call and for writing that. And also we have an update to that, the 2021 trends. It's our mid-year update. And Tonya, thank you also for writing an update on that. And lastly, I wanted to just mention before I turn it back over to Kendra that we are going to be announcing a new GWS series called The Doctor is Inclusive that will be hosted by Dr. Nicola Finley, who you will meet today. So back to you, Kendra, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Susie, for that warm introduction. And yes, Tonya, we will give you a little shout out later. Your trend in particular inspired one of our Q&A questions. So I would maybe love for you to chime in at that point. That would be wonderful. And so to kick us off and to set the stage for us today, I have the pleasure of introducing the author of our insightful Moonshot articles, Renee Moorfield, who is the CEO of WisdomWorks, a social enterprise that builds well-being driven leaders, brands, and workplaces globally. And she is on the board of the Global Wellness Institute. Renee will speak on this month's focus, Include. Over to you, Renee.
Thank you, Kendra. And it's funny because each month we talk about this topic or a topic, and every month I feel like I say, this is my favorite topic. And so this month I'm going to say, this is my favorite topic. I actually think this is one of the most important things we can be thinking about. When we think about inclusion, I mean, when I think about inclusion, and you saw this in the article, I think about creating an environment where people feel physically and psychologically safe, where we have a sense of belonging, where people feel their voices are respected and heard. We also think about inclusion, the way we can become more aware of inclusion is what are those voices, peoples, groups that are sidelined or undervalued? And how can we bring all those voices together and truly create a conversation that supports the well-being of everyone, not just a few? So that's the kind of the inclusion, the way that I talked about in the article. Our next speaker is absolutely brilliant, and she is going to be talking a lot about that type of leading inclusion and diversity in our world. So I want to focus a little bit differently in my segment here, and that's about the inclusion within us. So what I wanted to mention, because I was thinking about this last night, is some old models of how we think about the self, our self. So old models in psychology that are still deep within our psyches about the self is that we are independent, singular, unitary, autonomous agents, separate from others. And we can change somewhat, but we're born into this world with some resources and assets within us, and we're kind of stuck to those. That's an old model of thinking about the self. So maybe we can make some incremental changes in our lives, but not really. We're always going to come back to kind of a set point and normalize around how we were born. So fast forward to today and some new models of thinking about the self. And if there's one thing that I wish for our world is that all of us could implant a little chip that with this new idea about thinking about the self, and that is that we are a community of selves. There's a community in here, and you probably have felt that before if you were trying to make a decision and one side of you said, well, I'd actually like this to happen, and the other side of you said, well, I don't know, I'd like this to happen. Or you're trying to make a wellness change, or you're supporting someone else with a wellness change, and you hear them say, I really want to do this, but the person who's saying that, the self that's saying that, is not the self that is resisting the change. So we know that we have this community of selves within us. And my question for us is simply, what are the selves within us that we prioritize and value? We have a strong identity to those selves. But what are the selves within us that we sideline or undervalue? Those aspects of ourselves that if we were to value, for instance, for my own self, I learned as a child in a pretty stressful childhood that if I were responsible and diligent, that responsible self, I would learn I would succeed. But as I've gotten older, I've realized the play self didn't get enough time. And now I find my play self gets really irritated when she doesn't get to speak. And how much I am enjoying creating opportunities for my play self to show up, and not just show up outside of my work, but show up right in work with humor and fun and joy. So what are the selves within us that we sideline or we undervalue, and how can we create an ecosystem within us? As we say within the organizations we're leading, working with, we say, how can we create an ecosystem that really values and respects all the selves? How can we do that within? Because if we don't do that within, I don't know if we can do that without in the world. So that's my thoughts for today, and that's to set up our next speaker, who is just a dynamite.
Thank you so much, Renee. Great perspective that we can shift within ourselves because we have control over that. And fun is a great topic, and hopefully your fun voice will come speak next month when the topic is relaxed. So very fitting. Thank you, Renee. Wonderful. So I am thrilled to introduce our dynamite special guest, as Renee said, Dr. Nicola Finley. Dr. Finley is an internal medicine physician who completed a fellowship in integrative medicine, and she's part of the movement to reshape health and wellness and how they're defined, not only encompassing physical health, but emotional, sleep, and social wellness. She has hands-on experience working with economically disadvantaged communities, giving her a unique perspective on various health inequities. And among these impressive accolades, she is also a member of the advisory board of the Global Wellness Summit. Dr. Finley is joining us today to discuss the importance of intentional and proactive inclusive leadership, a pressing issue the Global Wellness Institute is committed to helping the wellness industry better understand and address. Welcome, Dr. Nicola Finley.
Thank you, Kendra. And can you hear me okay? I switched sets. Renee, thank you for that introduction as well. So I thought I would just spend a few minutes talking about what inclusive leadership means to me. And it's really, for me, looking at this with a learner's mind. I am always curious, I am always learning and changing my viewpoints based on what I learn. Inclusive leadership is prioritizing diversity in all departments and at all levels of an organization. So I wanted to chat a little bit about being inclusive in terms of our clients in the wellness industry, and then also having a diverse workforce. I agree fully with Renee, that sense of belonging. And for me, as a Black integrative medicine physician, I want to be heard, I want to be seen, and I want that for our diverse clients as well. You know, all of us on this call in the wellness industry believe prevention is the best medicine. And that's really the same when it comes to diversity inclusion. We need to be proactive and try to foresee problems and prevent problems. So when I think about that, I think about what happens when there's a bystander and the bystander sees someone not being included. What does that bystander do? Does that bystander speak up, or does the bystander look the other way? And I think it's important for inclusive leadership within an organization, when we think about our diverse clients, that we have a culture where the bystander has courage to speak up, and the bystander cares enough and caring. I think caring is such an important part of really coming from the heart, knowing that I care enough about this person, that I see them not being included, that I will have the courage to speak up. And I think about that from a client perspective, because in the wellness space, for me, I like dancing and I love Zumba. And anyone who has taken a Zumba class, they might be familiar with the scarves. There are these like colorful hip scarves that have these gold coins on them, and you shake your hips and the coins make noise, great music. And I remember taking a class, and I've taken classes throughout the country, world actually. And there was a class where everyone was, you know, encouraged to put on a scarf, but there was one client who the scarf didn't fit her hips. And she then, as a result, was the only one not wearing this colorful scarf. And I noticed it because I'm always vigilant and kind of looking to see who's being included, who's not being included. And she wanted me to be included in this scenario. And afterwards, one of her friends and I, we were just chatting, and she said her friend didn't enjoy the class because she didn't feel included. And I thought, dancing is for everyone. It's for all body shapes. And that's the beauty of dancing. The organization should have bigger scarves. And why doesn't the studio think about that? So I chatted with the person in charge, and she said, well, you know what we do? We just tie two scarves together, and then it can fit, or two or three scarves together. And I thought, what a great solution. But then, yes, and it's adapt. I fully agree. But then I thought, why not be proactive? Why don't we have two or three scarves tied together, always sitting there, so that person doesn't feel uncomfortable, doesn't feel marginalized, and we want to make sure that person feels seen and feels heard. So as a bystander, it's a culture of see something, say something. It's a culture of you hear something, say something. And I think that fosters that sense of belonging. And then we can also think about this from the provider point of view. So my discipline is integrative medicine. And in integrative medicine, there's not a lot of diversity, just like there's not a lot of diversity diversity among many healthcare wellness providers specifically. But what can we do to change that? We can foster diversity within the pipeline. I think that's important. And it's really that concept. You have to see it to be it. So if we can show diversity in the wellness space, we can encourage others to go into wellness. And I even think about integrative medicine conferences. Many times there are many few people, participants in the audience, but even fewer speakers at wellness conferences. So we need to change that leadership position, the academia within integrative medicine and within that concept within an organization, because an organization can choose who gets to go to these conferences for educational opportunities. So it's really reflecting the culture and the diversity within the community. So when I think about myself, I want to be able to bring my authentic self to work. I want to show my authentic me, and I am more productive as a result. So that sense of belonging is really that opportunity for an organization to let someone choose what they speak about, to let someone not just feel included, but to have a sense of belonging. And that's what I think about with this wellness organization, the Global Wellness Summit and the Global Wellness Institute. They allowed me to choose what I wanted to speak about. That gave me a sense of belonging. So I thought I would end with a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes about diversity and inclusion. It's from Jerika Blackman. She used to be a dean at Stanford University, and now she has a diversity consulting business. Her quote is, "Diversity is being asked to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Belonging is being able to dance how you want. And equity is having a turn picking the DJ." So I just wanted to share my thoughts about a sense of belonging, feeling seen and feeling heard. Thanks, Kendra.
Thank you, Nicola. Fantastic. And I'm so glad that we will be dancing later today, and your thoughts are so inspiring. It's very important for us to listen and constantly evolve. So absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being with us today. Awesome. So I'm also excited to introduce our next segment. It's a new segment, and it's important because it's important for us to include art and originality as a part of holistic wellness. So today we have 3 poets here to share their work with us on topics of privilege, allyship, similar to what Nicola was saying about bystanders and speaking up, mental health, exclusion, and resilience. So our first poet today is Sarah Taylor. Sarah Taylor is a 2021 Condé Nast top travel specialist with a focus on wellness and spirituality and art. Her poems are in the short and soothing style of Sijo, inspired by her travels to Korea, and focus on how each of us has to evaluate our privilege that we are afforded through any number of factors, whether it's our gender, race, physical ability, economic status, or other facets of our existence. She believes we have to use our voices and freedom to create and provide opportunities for others. Her first poem speaks to disabilities, and her second poem is a tribute to a friend who started a Black Lives Matter movement in her hometown. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Kendra, and thank you to everyone who's here today. I'll begin with my first poem. The title is A Label. Disabled. I'm able, but your definition excludes me. Include me, and your perspective might change, your axis might shift, if only temporarily, because mine is permanent. And my second shijo is called Stand Up. I am a catalyst for change, for inspiration and hope. Each action engenders a thought that becomes a force of will, a cycle that builds a movement. I am the change, starting now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Very inspiring. Our next poet is Lee Martinez Soto. Lee is a queer Mexican poet and translator who writes about the stigma of mental illness and healthcare in the Mexican and Mexican-American borderland community. In their work, they focus on their experiences with accessing care and healing, as well as finding accessible resources and competent specialists. Lee holds a master's degree in mental health counseling and a bachelor's in psychology. And Lee has been published as a co-author in prestigious research papers on topics of migration, resiliency, and homelessness. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the space. So this is called Masking. It's just half one poem, and I'll start. You seem fine to me. Fine. I'm taking the mask off. I'll call you next time, ready on speed dial, so you may hear the disquiet inside of me, the buzzing sound of the exact same thoughts traveling back and forth through my neurons for the millionth time. What am I doing with my life? I shouldn't be here. I should just quit. Could I afford to quit? 80,000 minus 50,000 equals no. When will things get better? I don't want to be here. A part-time, 30,000 plus however much a part-time pays. When will I feel satisfied? Job search, outdated resume, another cover letter. You can't even buy food with that 5 years experience for a recent college grad. Can I do more than survive? You function just right. Right. I'll invite you the next time I find myself on the designated spot for the sad people to cry in. Let's set up a telehealth meeting so you can see the panic, hear me swallow down my anger, desperation, disenchantment. Never seen, never heard, except for this time. I'll let my colleagues join us too, and hopefully you could explain to us then why we find comfort in the thoughts of no tomorrows, why we cope in self-deprecation and addictions, why we barely get by on the statistically sound ways in which we could give away our days willingly. You're too smart, you don't need it. Too smart or just enough to pretend to function. Let me set you up for a chat with my supervisor. Perhaps you could change her mind on my latest eval. Explain to her how much the gaps of memories, the lost time to the static sound of the realizations, the daily astral projecting where I leave this vessel behind every hour on the hour is conductive to efficiency. I don't believe in accommodations. And I don't believe in working to live, living to work, letting the sound of my broken watch seep between my fingers to enjoy not a second of it. But here we are. That's it for me.
Thank you, Lee. Very important that we talk about mental health in this space, especially as a wellness organization. So thank you for joining us. So our final poet is Unmesh Mohikar, and he is an author from Pune, India, and has written and performed poetry at international events in 3 languages, English, Hindi, and Marathi. A true globetrotter, he has visited over 22 countries. Over to you, Unmesh.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let's go to the poem. 14 years old teenager standing near the corner of the ground. They didn't invite him to play. It was always the same. The students ganged together against him, and he was left alone, lonely. In a strange way, this was the sample of things to come in future where loneliness was his only friend. We are a race programmed to focus on exclusions based on race, caste, religion, sex, talent, or bald head. We are like vultures waiting to exclude people, to tell them, you don't belong here. This is me, my turf, even if someone is perfect. He is not like us. He's too perfect to be true. We exclude people to include our own in our fold. The excluded are kept stranded at the boundary of village, town, heart, and minds. It's really interesting when even the excluded practice exclusion. Not their fault, because their so-called superior brothers taught them the same. Is this ever going to end? Or as the exclusionist says, only few people will be included and the rest will be excluded, exterminated. I see people excluded because of gender. What is their fault? You don't get an option to decide your gender or parents when you are born. Who are you to decide someone should be excluded or shunted, making them feel worthless, good for nothing, just because he has the spark and something which you don't have? Now, this is not a war cry to exclude the exclusionist. Let us try to be inclusionist. Let us look at the aberrations as wonders of creations. Let us not look at the faults. We all stand on fault lines. Let us not draw lines between us. We all have bloody lines clawed on your heart by life. Let's not be the furniture of the society. Let's dismantle the old furniture. Let's walk on new ways. Let's design a new society. Let's design a new society. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Unmesh. Yes, let's dismantle that furniture. I like the title of that poem, and it's perfect for include. You know, I'd rather be excluded for who I include, rather be excluded for who I include than included for who I exclude. So that's perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much to our 3 poets for joining us. And I'm also glad that Susie's including her pets. That was an idea that I was potentially going to have, but barking does not help with Zoom calls, but she's on mute, so thank you. Wonderful. So now in a similar creative spirit and to help us keep the moon's magical power top of mind, I will now introduce Nancy Davis, the Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director of the Global Wellness Institute, who will provide us with a moon moment.
Thank you, Kendra. And I want to thank everyone who has spoken before me, because it's just an incredible group. And I just really, really appreciate what everyone is saying. And the poetry was very powerful. I'm going to bring us back to the moon just for a moment. And today, actually, this day, June 24th, marks the first full moon after the summer solstice. And it's called the strawberry moon. And this phenomenon derives its name from ancient American tribes who harvested strawberries with the arrival of this full moon. And what I particularly love about this moon is that it has a different name in different parts of the world. So in Europe, it's known as the rose moon because it marks the harvesting of roses. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's referred to as the hot moon, as it coincides with the beginning of the summer season north of the equator. So wherever you are in the world, there is a connection to this moon and to seasons and harvests and cultures. You might say the strawberry moon is a talisman of inclusion. We can all look up in our various night skies and know that this moon, like every moon, has room for us all. Thank you.
I'm going to snap for you, Nancy, too. So poetic. Thank you so much for sharing with us. That's so inspiring. And yes, we are so connected with the moon and we don't even fully realize it. Wonderful. So now it's time for our interactive Q&A portion where I'll present a question on the screen and we'd like for you to type a response in the chat box. So if you just give me one moment, I will be sharing my screen with you. Beautiful visual of the moon after that moon moment gets us into the mood. And as you know, the theme is include. So first up, how can we amplify the importance of prioritizing diversity, especially in the wellness industry? So think about this, how can we share, spread, and reinforce the value of learning from different perspectives like we're doing today? Does it lead to better problem solving? Does open dialogue stimulate inspiration? So please feel free to respond in the chat. Ask and listen. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, how do we bring up these conversations? It can be hard. Diverse leaders is key. I love the bunch that we have today. Inviting everyone. Ooh, better peripheral vision. Interesting. Great answer, Ranga. Repetitiveness. Yes, that's why we're doing the Doctor is Inclusive series, because it's not just a one-stop shop. Absolutely. Personal life and practices, adding humanity to work. Wonderful. Yeah, think about marginalized voices, who's being left out. These are great answers. Thank you. Please keep going, and I'm just going to move on to the next question. How can we go from optics to substance when addressing inclusivity? So this was the question that was inspired by one of our 2021 trends, adding color to wellness, written by researcher Tonya Callender, who's with us today. Tonya, I don't know if you want to chime in about, what inspired this question, but I was very moved by your trends, and we just released the mid-year update, as Susie mentioned, so it's available for purchase. If you need the link, I'm happy to send it to you.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
Okay, very briefly, because this is something that people have been asking me since they read my trend, because I think I was trying to start a conversation and have people start to think about different points of view. And for those of you who have had the opportunity or will have the opportunity to look at the trends update, I tried to address some of these questions. And it is a question of, so, okay, what do I do? I'm not a leader. I work in a specific industry. And, of course, the first was just listen and learn, right? You have to listen and learn about not just how people who have been excluded are feeling and what they need, but also find out what's already being done, what has worked. So I also talked about, wherever you work, if you are in a leadership position, trying to showcase more accessible wellness pathways. Sometimes in the wellness industry, we have a tendency to highlight things that are trendy, that are exclusive, that are difficult for normal people like me to access. So I think it's important to do that, but also, as I said before, support people who are already working to promote equal access, who are already working to help marginalized groups attain more equitable solutions and access to wellness. And finally, there are a lot of policies and programs that are actually already out there globally and in the United States that are in small communities, or you might have small nonprofits working. Look at them, find out about them, give your time to help, or money or your voice to promote these policies. And that's it. Sorry, it's taken up so much time, but.
No, please. We're so happy to have you here, Tonya. Thank you for sharing that. That's actually the perfect segue to my next question, because I'm curious if our audience has, resources that can help us learn and evolve and be better, allies and make change together. So the third question is, how can we educate ourselves and our networks about the unique obstacles faced by marginalized communities when they seek wellness pathways? What resources do you follow? How can we be more understanding and empathetic when these individuals aim to, nurture mental health, explore nature, eat nutritious foods, and be physically active? Acknowledge where representation is not sufficient, including with trends. Yep. Why is there low representation in the wellness sector? That's a good point. Storytelling, very important. I'm glad we're giving a space. We're gonna also, excuse me, hear from our audience some more in person, not just through the chat in a moment. So we would love for some of you to share momentarily. Research, yes. I find that I learn a lot from social media. I try to follow a lot of different sources. Social media isn't always a waste of time. At least I think it can be educational to amplify voices. Try to follow the masses. Way more storytelling, absolutely. Well, I think we got some good stories today with those poets, so great. Wonderful. Okay, so instead of our breakout sessions, we're going to stay together again this time. I'm going to present one last question, as you can see, to the whole group, and we'll have a few minutes for people to share with everyone. So please raise your hand and I can call on you and just unmute yourself, and please be brief so more of us can participate. And the question is, how can the wellness industry better meet the needs and include the values of people of color, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQIA+ community? So I will put the question in the chat and stop the share screen so we can see each other's faces a little bit more closely. And I can see if does anyone want to kick us off? I know Tonya, kicked us off a little bit by not always focusing on what's the hardest or what's the trendiest. Like, we should talk about, equitable wellness and how we can access that. So does anyone want to share some ideas? Liza, I see you're raising your hand. Are you there? Hello.
Hi there. Yes, I would just say there's great power in sharing positive case studies. For the organizations that are really pushing the boundaries and finding good responses, I think when they can share their best practices, it helps everybody. And one of the other answers that has been repeated several times, storytelling and research. I think that really helps organizations who say, we'd like to be a part of this. We just have no idea how to go about it. And if they don't have the people they want to include already in their organizations, they need to look elsewhere. So when somebody's got a recipe that works, sharing that, I think, is very powerful.
So true. So true. We definitely need to seek outside resources. Thank you, Liza. Anybody else like to share? Ooh, a quiet bunch today. Maybe I
can
I'll
share
say
quickly.
something. Hi there.
Oh.
I think that I run a lot of groups, and when someone finishes talking, we just go like this or snap, like I see some people doing, and it really has people feel included once they say something, because a lot of times when we say something, we just kind of say, oh, sorry, and you kind of blank out. Whereas if there's completion and someone just acknowledges, includes, it's nice. So just putting that in, I see a lot of people doing it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Woo!
This is sign language for applause. So I think it's great. And I like the snaps with the poets. It's very centering, especially when we're so separated through this, virtual interface. Thank you. And Sarah, I think you were going to chime in.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, using your respective platform, whatever that is. I know somebody mentioned social media, to really do your storytelling with your respective audience. I know last summer I wasn't hesitant to talk about Black Lives Matter, but I wasn't sure if my audience, which is very international on my social media platforms, would understand it. But I talked with a few friends here in the US, and they said, no, you absolutely have to talk about it with your international audience, because they need to hear it from you. That's why they follow you. They want to hear what's going on, and they want to hear how, for centuries this has been happening to the African American community, and they need a framework, and they respect your voice. So I think not being afraid to speak to your audience. Of course, we're not going to touch everybody because everybody's in a different community. And doing that thing that Dr. Finley mentioned, like, speaking up and bringing the two tides together, and doing that thing to just, bring awareness to it, whatever your platform is. So something that's simple about, just doing an Instagram story, or whatever your platform is, to use it to begin the conversation, to just start it.
Thank you, Sarah. Very important, especially in allyship. Sorry, forgot my spirit fingers. Would someone else like to share?
I'll share, Kendra.
Please.
And Sarah actually just sparked this thought I had. I just recently, it was a couple nights ago, I watched this documentary called Hillbilly. I don't know if any of you all have seen it. It is absolutely incredible. And it's a complete reframe. We have spent so much time in media telling stories of poverty and downtrodden, and this language that doesn't uplift. It may tell some aspect of the truth, but it does not tell the whole truth of the human spirit. And Hillbilly completely reframed the hillbilly, the Appalachian area of the United States, and also talked about how we have this consciousness of there's a hillbilly in all parts of the world. There's groups of people that we have put in a box, and then tried to put them aside. So the use of media to kind of uplift those positive stories and those stories of resilience, I don't think we get enough of that. And I think that's a big way that we can be educating ourselves, is how we use our media.
So true. Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Nicola, please. Dr. Finley, should I say?
No, Nicole, well, you should say. I just wanted to also add in, it can be uncomfortable talking about these topics. And I think that's important for us to talk about. The fact that everyone here has shared stories and people are really being vulnerable, transparently listening to some of these stories, sharing these stories. So I think it's important that we talk about how this might make us feel uncomfortable. But then over time, the more we talk about things, the less uncomfortable we feel. And it's just like talking about what color shirt I'm wearing. And it should be as easy as that, the more we increase awareness. So I just wanted to acknowledge that sometimes it could be uncomfortable, and I think it's okay that it's uncomfortable and we can work through it together.
So true, Nicola. Thank you. We're getting better at it. I think, with practice makes, well, maybe not perfect, but improvements for sure. Yes. And I liked a comment in the chat from Michelle McCracken. I believe she said, take it from Nike, just do it. A lot of the time we're talking about it, which is helpful. I think it's important to talk about, but also to take action. Esther, would you like to share?
Sure. One of the things that's happening in Canada right now is just a horrific discovery of hundreds of buried Indigenous children on the old residential school sites. And Canada Day is coming up on July 1st. And it's just such a hard thing to see that. And in the context of this conversation, in the context of that question, sometimes I feel so helpless. What do I do now? Our country is founded on this, like Sarah was talking earlier about Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter, and it's not just the children, it's the generational effects that it's had, and it's reflecting of everything that we're talking about today. Sometimes I really literally have no idea what to do but listen and I guess put my money where my mouth is, but sometimes I just have to go through the grief and the horror and the rage and hopefully come out the other side while listening and finding the heart of compassion. So I have no answers for that, but it's just such a deep time to be recognizing this. That's all I have to say right now.
Thank you for your vulnerability, Esther. We appreciate it. John Toomey, sorry to leave you hanging there.
No, you're right, Kendra. I suppose I explore this from a personal perspective, and I feel that in our leadership in this realm, the first step, well, for me anyway, is to start to get really clear and really honest about the labels that I automatically put on people. Because I feel that as soon as we put a label on another person, we're then responding to the label, not the person. And through the indoctrination of our lives and how we live and how we grow up in our societies, Australia being very much a white society, some of those labels are so quick and so immediate that we don't even notice that we're putting them there. But when we do see someone through a label, we're not seeing them as just another human being. And I feel that if we can lead the way there and start to deliberately look beyond our labels and don't dismiss our labels, learn what they are, notice them, and then look beyond them, then we can help others to do the same. And I think that really that's the spiritual path for humanity right now. And we can all get better at it.
Very true. Thank you, John. Yeah, it's important because I feel like for a while we were in a space where we didn't see color, but that's not validating at all. And I think it's important to, see and acknowledge, but look past it. There's depth to everybody. And I think that's important. And what I learned about Australia recently is you have a national holiday called I'm Sorry Day to kind of apologize to the damage done to the Indigenous community. I think that's something we really need to take with us, is to apologize when we make mistakes, because nobody's perfect in anything. So we're learning, we're evolving, and we'll, make change. Would someone else like to speak?
I'd like to hear more about that I Apologize Day. John, is that something, I mean, I've never heard of that, Kendra. Thank you for bringing it up. John, do you know about it?
Yeah, it was actually an event that was held about in 2007, I think, where a new prime minister came in, and there was this sort of elephant that had been in the room for decades in Australia, where, the whites came in and basically exterminated a huge percentage of the Indigenous population. And so the whole of the parliament, the whole of the country basically stood still, and leaders stood up and apologised to the Aboriginal race. It was very powerful. It was very powerful. And we celebrate that day every year. Not all places take a holiday, but still we celebrate that day. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think, the United States could take a page out of that book, and most of the world. So thank you for telling us. Deborah, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Kendra. Just to kind of touch back on what Esther was saying, Monday was National Indigenous Peoples Day here in Canada, and it's very interesting to see the language and everything that's being used after everything that we have been experiencing and being exposed to this last year, and people's understanding that they need to learn, they need to be included in this process and not just say, well, that's someone else's problem. This is something that we got to experience yesterday. We had a full day panel with Indigenous Lives Matter. They did a full day workshop, which was really, really well done, and really spoke to some amazing things that we can actually action as those of us that are non-Indigenous. And also realizing that there is a deeper understanding that is common, and health practices, well-being practices. On Tuesday, I believe it was, I did a workshop with these lovely gentlemen from BC. I'm here in Ontario, and they did a smudging ceremony with us. And we also did some chanting, and it was really, really beautiful to be able to have someone who is Indigenous tell those of us who are non, that smudging is something we can all do as long as it's done in the right way. And I think there are things that we need to learn as respectful things as we go through, that every culture has something they bring to it. And we need to respect those things instead of just saying, oh, well, I don't like that. We need to respect it from the very beginning and not have a place of judgment that just because you don't like it, you shouldn't respect it. I think we do that with everyone, but especially when we're dealing with people we are trying to make sure we are doing inclusion with. There is a huge healing process in that, when we are given permission to know that we are not being offensive, that we have actually a permission to do something. I know there was a thing that happened in the news yesterday, I think it was, about a rum company that was started by a very big movie star that got shut down very quickly because the name of the brand represents something that is culturally attached. And that was something that I think was very big, because this person is a person of color who was brought to the table and said, no, you can't do this. You need to be respectful. And I think we need to be able to do that in a respectful way so that we all learn, not just to put a label on one person or one group, that we all learn collectively.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you for sharing. I think it definitely brings up the topic of, cultural appropriation in a way, and how we navigate that, because it can be challenging, and respect is so important. So thank you. I think we have time for one more person to share. I love this vulnerable space. It seems like a safe space. I hope you feel that way too. I'm going to check my slide two. Is anyone? Oh, Denise.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly share. We have a lot of activity around this in this community that I live in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia. And one of the organizations we have is Integrate for Good. And it really is designed from a disability for students and for adults, and incorporating, basically it starts with the premise of they exist. They're humans, they have a heartbeat, they put their pants on just like all of us. So we don't want anyone to dismiss them, and we want to elevate them and have them recognized within the community. And we do that by giving them a resume. We give them skills and tools that they can use. We pass those resumes to all levels of corporations and organizations, and we get them hired. So for us, DEI includes a second D for disability. So we never, ever forget that that disability is not something we're trying to truly spotlight per se, but if you don't incorporate it and think about it and integrate it for the better good, you are always forgetting folks with disabilities who, again, have a heartbeat like all of us. And we're really soaring with it. And we're so happy for the businesses that so many of these folks have created. And it's brought out additional awareness from the community as a whole, which is all walks of life. So just want to quickly share.
Thank you, Denise. Nancy, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I just want, I know you're getting tight on time. I just wanted to respond to the question in the chat from Tara on children. And just to say that I think that we are doing a Moonshot program for school children. We are starting it, we're kicking it off this fall. And I think one of the most impactful ways to get to changing the narrative around inclusion is to start very, very early. It's about education. It's about making sure children know that, you know, not everybody looks like them or is like them, but that's A-okay. So we are going to try to get that off the ground, and we'll look for all of your help and support. So I just wanted to say we are doing something in that realm that we're very excited about.
Thank you, Nancy. And that's the perfect segue, because I now have the pleasure of introducing the winner of the June Moonshot Challenge, Corey Long. And she works in the education space as the Equity Compliance Officer at the Davis School District in Utah. She co-founded an employee resource group focused on leadership with educators of color. She also helped to revamp the way the district's multicultural clubs are facilitated throughout the school year to allow for more meaningful connections. So Corey, we would love to hear briefly from you about more about your work.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Corey, like she said. Our work, particularly with the employee resource group, which we call Future Leaders of Color, was started as we wanted to make sure it was meaningful for employees and very intentional and organic in the way that it was formed. So I have a couple of my colleagues on here as well, Bianca Midori and Dr. BR, who also kind of helped with these ideas and helped to found the ways that we did this. So shout out to them. But with the multicultural clubs as well, we wanted to make sure it was structured, because we had schools who were doing really great things with their multicultural clubs and schools who didn't even know where to begin to include our students. A little bit about our school district. We have about 90% of our school district is white, and the majority religion is the LDS faith. And so there's not a ton of diversity to pull from, but those spaces that we do want to provide more diversity, that's where we're trying to add in, that's where we're trying to do these intentional projects and these initiatives. So that's just a little bit more about us.
Thank you so much, Corey. You're an inspiration. And yes, we want to follow up with the children's Moonshot calendar. And I know you might be working with older, teenagers, and that's so important too. So we'll have updates about that. Hopefully students will be returning to in-person school in the fall. In the meantime, though, at least here in the States, we'll be basking in the summertime vibes, where I will ask you to save the date for our next full moon celebration, which is Friday, July 23rd at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the theme is relax, so very important. So thank you for joining us. And last, but certainly not least, we have Lisa Fasulo here, the founder and director of the Center for Transformative Movement, to lead us in a dance experience, Bring Your Authentic Self, featuring pulling in movements and an especially inclusive song to remind us that we're more alike than we are different. Over to you, Lisa. You're on mute.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you, Kendra. So yes, everyone has touched on it, that inclusivity and the sense of family that Nancy and Susie just have created over the years. Everyone that I've brought to Global Wellness or Call has said, gosh, it's just like you kind of feel like you're included or part of it, even if you don't talk. So we are family here. And today's movement pattern is going to be, it's called core distal in the dance world. All it is it's core coming into the core. I mean, if we're sitting, it would be your legs included, and then out. So let's today try to do it with our shoulders too, because our hands and our frontal lobe and our eyes are so overworked, but our shoulders relax us and bring our parasympathetic in. So in and out. In and out. Take it away, Kendra. See how many ways we can come in and out.